am excited to introduce our featured guest today on the lab, Andrew Heiss. You probably know him from his blog. I certainly do. Andrew, would you like to say hello, introduce yourself?
Hi. So this is exciting seeing all these people. So I'm Andrew Heiss. I'm an assistant professor at Georgia State University in Atlanta. I do R stuff. I teach data visualization, causal inference type stuff. If you're on social media, you've seen me there. I was on Twitter for years and then it died. And so now I'm on Blue Sky and kind of LinkedIn, but mostly Blue Sky. And have a blog. Lots of people use it. I have lots of teaching websites that you may have seen. Lots of you like have copies of them, and that's awesome. And I always like stumble on random like class websites, and it's like my stuff, and it's always fun to see that. So, copy my stuff, everybody. This is cool. Yeah.
You heard it here first. Copy his stuff. I feel like that's, the open source community. We're all about it. All right, Andrew, what are you going to be showing us today? And if you would like to go ahead and start sharing your screen, you can do that at any time.
Yeah, let me share my screen. So, in general, this is my first time ever actually being at a data science lab. I've been to a couple of hangouts, and those are like more formal, but this is like just showing cool stuff. Because lots of people ask me all the time, like how I do stuff so fast, and one, I don't. It just looks like it. But two, I have like lots of cool little programs and extensions and things that I use a lot, and so. I switched to Positron in September 2024, like a few months after it first came out. And so I've been using that full time for the past almost 18 months now. And so I have lots of cool little tips and tricks that I've stumbled across over the past year and a half of doing that. And then just other general neat things that make life easier. So that's kind of what I'm gonna show you all today and answer whatever questions you have. So
I'm
yeah.
excited.
So let me share my screen here and switch away from Positron. Oh, um, so I actually, in the spirit of just sharing everything, if you go to my blog now, there is a post with all of the links to the things that I'm going to show. And so I also put that in Discord just now, so you can get to it directly that way too, but also just ask whatever questions you have. So in general, Libby and I talked about this before, kind of the general outline for this. And so what we wanted to start off with was just general positron stuff, how to find good extensions, how to do some fancy, neat things with like the connections pane and positron, other things like that. And then we'll look at some other cool workflow things that work both on Mac OS and on Windows. So if I'm a Mac person, but if you're a Windows person, you can still do all of this cool stuff too. Um, First, I wanted to talk about the extensions, because this is something I've noticed a lot. I still have not switched to Positron when teaching R. I'm still using RStudio in part just because VS Code slash Positron is kind of a bigger beast because it works across like all languages, not just R. And so with students, I find that it's easier to just stick with RStudio, and then near the end of the semester, I point them to Positron and say, "Hey, this is a thing." And so with RStudio, that ecosystem is like related to the general R ecosystem. So all of like the RStudio add-ons, we tend to like inherently trust them because it's people in like the R community making little add-ons like GG Theme Assist and other neat things that let you do cool stuff. And so I've rarely run into people like worried about installing extensions or add-ons in RStudio, but I have run into that with VS Code slash Positron, in part because that's a huge community. It's people who do like Rust full time or JavaScript full time, and then they make their own extensions. And so, like, I don't know any of those people, and there's no like CRAN that like vets everything, and so I'm not necessarily worried about like malicious code showing up in the different extensions, just like how well the extensions work. And so, one thing I wanted to show really quick is just kind of how I can tell if stuff like if an extension is good and safe to install. I have like a few heuristics here. So, like this right here, this better comments thing, it's on. So, the OpenVSX extension store is like the open source version of the VS Code extension store. But all of those extensions live at GitHub. And so I'll check like if I come across something like this better comments thing, I look and see what it does. It's got cool screenshots and stuff. That's neat. And so they'll do special syntax highlighting if you have like a to-do comment or other types of comments. But then I also check to see if it's highly rated. The OpenVSX ratings are like useless because very few people actually use this thing. So it's got like
I've never
180.
used it.
Yeah, like the 5 people have clicked on 5 stars. Neat. But like tons of people have downloaded this thing. So sometimes I'll even look at the repository or the extension on VS Code's store just to see what people there are saying about it. Because the OpenVSX world is kind of dead. Because nobody comments there. But I'll also look at like the GitHub repository for it just to see this hasn't been updated in 4 years. It's got a bunch of issues still that are fairly recent, and nothing's been changing. But all it really does is change syntax highlighting for stuff. So I'm not super concerned if it's not super updated because it doesn't do much. If it's something more important, more complex, and it hasn't been updated for a while, then I'll just like not. I'll still like install it and play around with it, and generally it'll be like really buggy if it hasn't been updated for a while. But those are my general heuristics. I'll look at like the OpenVSX page, check the GitHub page, check the VS Code version of it, and see what people are saying about it. And then if it looks cool, I'll install it and play around with it. So that's my general process for doing that. Um,
Okay, sweet. Now I'm going through and clicking on all of mine that I've added in the past couple of months and like inspecting them.
Yeah, I do that too. Like I'll go through like I forget what I've installed, and if I'm not like using it, I'll go and disable it or uninstall it. But I always forget what I've turned on. So it's useful to go back and check stuff. Um, Cool. So some of the good ones that I've found, I put error here just because it's neat, but it's built into Positron. So this is the automatic code formatter and linter. Some people actually have there's a setting in Positron where you can have it run every time you save a file. I don't want to relinquish that much control to computers, like reformatting my code every time I save, but some people do, and that's cool. What I mostly use it for is like if I have code, let me just grab some code like ggplot, blah, blah, and then AES. Wow, we'll zoom in a bit. So I'll do something like AES x equals something plus geom point. Okay, so that's like horrific R code there. If I just select it and then do Command Shift A, it will reformat it using air, and follow all of the fancy tidyverse rules. There are other settings you can change with air. The documentation shows how to do it. I haven't messed with any of those. I'm happy with that, and it works. It has cool heuristics too. Like if it sees that I have like the data set on a new line and then I run it, then it assumes I want all of the arguments to be on new lines. And so it'll update that automatically. And so error is really cool for that. Better comments. I already showed like if you have some comments here, like neat, this is a comment. And then later I say to do, this is important. Notice how it's like orange. And that just automatically got picked up because I have that better comments extension turned on. And so it recognizes a bunch of other things. I basically only really use to do because I forget what the others are. But I should probably eventually learn what they are because they're cool.
I used to do a lot, so this is really useful. I want my to-dos to stand out, or I want them to be put into a list for me somewhere.
Yeah, and there are other extensions that will give like a little pane in the side here that will list like all your to-dos. I think one is called To-Do
Ooh,
Tree.
yes,
I
that would
had
be
that on for a
amazing.
while, but what I ran into there is it picks up everything in a folder. And so if you have like Quarto extensions or RN, actually this was an issue because you have like whole copies of like R packages. And so if other
Right.
people are using to-dos in like extension files, then those also appear in like the list of everything you have to do. And so there's ways of like filtering those out and omitting certain folders, but I always like am too lazy to do it. And so my lazy way of doing it is I just like search for to do, and there's all the to dos in my project, which is like the poor man's way of doing it. But there are cool extensions that let you do it. Um, cool.
I don't
Oh,
even know how you search in that sidebar. Like I've never clicked that button before. until you just clicked it and I was like, oh, there's a search button
Yeah,
there.
so there's a search button. It's Command Shift F or Control Shift F. It will
That's what I
search
usually do.
your
Yeah,
project.
keyword.
Yeah, but it's here. That'll search the whole project. Oh, notice how this is up at the top. Isn't that cool? So this is brand
Yes.
new, as of like earlier this week. So if you are in Positron with this Explorer thing here and you right click, you can change the activity bar position. By default, it's over on the side. This is typically where
Hmm.
everybody sees it. And that is extra real estate over on the side here. And so if you right click and say top, then it puts it up at the top, and then you have extra space with the file thing, which is
Yes.
really
I love
neat.
it. And you can get there with Control Shift P, Command Shift P.
Recording.
I fixed it. You
Okay.
can just type in activity, and I think you get your like, yeah, move
Yeah, so
activity
you
bar
can
to
move activity
side.
bar to side or bottom.
Yeah.
Cool.
Although I feel like there are a couple other ways to do this. Just know that you can get to it multiple ways, y'all.
Yeah. Oh, so Tyler in Discord says it'll search everything in the project even if you don't have it open. Yes.
Hmm.
So like here's a big project. This is my website here. So if I search here for, I don't know, tidyverse, um, it's in 118 different files. I have the word tidyverse in this whole project here. Um,
If you click
so
them, do you get to them just like in our
Oh yeah,
studio?
yep, so it'll jump to it there.
Nice.
It also, if you click on this little thing, you can do a find and replace thing. And so I could call it like, I think way back in the day, people were trying to call it the Hadleyverse. So we could like, I could click on that button right there, and that would replace all in the entire project, which is terrifying. I'm not going to click on that. I'm going to move
Don't do
away.
that.
You can do like regular expression stuff. You can tell it which folders to exclude or include. You can be more careful about what you're searching there. But yeah, that search stuff is neat.
Cool. Thank you for indulging our search questions.
Yeah, I know. It's a super cool thing. Um, all right. So other things. So the better comments. One really cool thing is this one called Pastum or Pastum. I don't know what it's officially called. Um, This is so cool, and very few people know about this, so get ready for some magic. So if you like select some like a spreadsheet from Excel or just like copy a table from HTML or something, and then if I come to like Positron here, let me move this out of the way. And then if I paste it, it pastes it like this. It's no longer like tab separated or anything. Um, but what I can do is if I open like the command palette thing and do paste them, I can here show all of these paste them. So I can have it paste as a Julia data frame or a Python data frame or a markdown table or an R data frame. And if I choose R data frame, I can say I want it as a tibble or a tribble or a data.table or polars or base. So let's do a tribble. There it is. It's automatically a tribble.
Woohoo!
Or any other type of thing. Let's see what it looks like as a data table. Yeah, so that's cool. Um, and automatic. So
Yes.
Pastem lets you
And
do that.
thank you, Miles McBain, for being the DataPasta pioneer here. And then I think that Pastem was done to like mimic DataPasta by Anatoly, I think is his name. So thank you, Anatoly, for giving us that. Because if you haven't used DataPasta, it is an add-in for RStudio, specifically for RStudio. Add-ins are like RStudio's version of these extensions in Positron. And it's magical and I love it. I use it all the time. And so when Positron first came out, that was one of the things I really missed. So Pastem, fantastic. Pastum? Pastum? I don't know how
Pastem.
Anatoly
I
says it.
like Pastem because you paste things. But
Yeah, you paste things.
yeah, cool. Wins. That's easy. Okay, that's not spelled right. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is show another little extension called Rainbow CSV. It's really simple. All it really does is highlight different columns in a plain text CSV file with different colors. So if you ever have to manually like edit a CSV file or like look at it, um, then that's helpful. So like if I click on the CSV file here, in Positron, it'll automatically add, like open the CSV file as this cool data explorer thing, which is helpful. But if I want to like hand type in it, like I can't do that here. but there is this open as plain text file. So if I click on that, it'll open it as plain text. But notice how each of these columns now have a specific color, and that's coming
So
from
good.
Rainbow CSV here. So that's helpful. Like if you ever have to manually type something, now you can see that 15 is part of the this column now, and the 220 is part of the sex column, and this everything's like messed up now, and that's really visible with that Rainbow CSV thing, which is helpful.
Amazing.
One other one, if you do writing in Positron, you might want like a spell checker, like if you're doing like quarto writing and stuff. There are lots of different spell checkers out there. The one I like the most is called Spell Right. I have it linked here. It is supposed to use the built-in spell checker dictionary for your system. So if you're on a Mac, it uses the Mac. Yeah, so it uses the system spelling API. The Windows one uses whatever Windows API it is. That's cool because all the other ones I found use like Hunspell or like open source dictionaries that you have to like keep in parallel. And so like if you're on a Mac typing in some other program and you add a word to the dictionary, that's the same dictionary that Positron will use, and so you don't have to maintain like separate dictionaries and stuff. And
So
so,
this is like if I am doing my literate programming in
mhm.
Quarto and I am writing actual like narrative along with my stuff, it's going to do all of my spell checking for me.
Yep. So right there, tidyverse is not spelled correctly because it's not a word. And so it has that red underline there. I think there's a way I could add it to.
To your like your
Um,
Mac one, right?
Yeah, I think if I add it, like if I go to the spelling settings, like in here, there's like spell right. So add selection to user dictionary.
Oh,
That
nice.
I think that adds it to the system-wide dictionary, or it would put it in some special like VS Code positron thing, but I'm not sure. It
Very
doesn't take
cool.
into account words that are in Word because Word uses its own internal dictionary. It doesn't use the Mac OS dictionary, so um, that's just Word's thing.
All right, cool. Tyler, thank you for that question. That was a good one.
Cool. And then the final little extension thing I want to show is related to another question I get all the time, and lots of like the whole Positron team gets, is this notion of projects. So in RStudio, you have the RPROJ file that lets you create like an RStudio project. So when you double click on it, it opens a new RStudio instance and sets the working directory to that place, and it's great. Jenny Bryan won't burn down your computer because you're using the RPROJ things, and it's wonderful. Positron does not have an equivalent of an RPROJ file. And there's actually like a whole FAQ site or page on the Positron site about this. What it does instead is it follows the same philosophy as VS Code in general. Like if you open a folder in Positron or in VS Code, it sets the working directory to that folder, and then everything kind of lives there. And so it's your job to open a folder in Positron. You can do that like on a Mac. You can just like drag a folder from Finder down into Positron and it'll do it. So here's a random folder. I don't know what's in here, but if I drag it to Positron, done. That is now a project um, where the working directory is set to that place. Doesn't there's It's just CSV files, so it doesn't really do much, but that is how you kind of open a project. Um, Positron has this upper corner menu for recent projects that you've opened. So these are just recent folders that you've opened. RStudio has a similar thing. You can open the project in a new window. You can open the project directly and replace the window, but that's all there. You can also go to open folder. There's probably a command thing here called open folder. Yep, you can do the command palette thing and open a folder that way, and that all works.
And you
Um,
could also have multi-folder workspaces in
Yes.
Positron.
So that I've never actually done.
I've done it
But
once and I got confused and I removed it. But at least you can do it.
yeah, so the way it calls that a workspace. So you can
Hmm.
save a workspace, which is either a single folder or a set of folders that all open up. And then that is actually a file. And so like on my personal blog, this is before I knew what I was doing. So on my personal blog, I have an RPROJ file, and I also have this code workspace thing, this .code workspace file. That
Hmm.
is the workspace. So if I double click on that in Finder, it would open Positron to that place. But I actually never use that anymore. I either drag it down or there's a cool extension called Project Manager that
Ooh,
lets
I
you
cannot wait to see
have
this one.
little shortcuts for different projects you have on your computer. And so
Ooh,
you
but
can jump
before we go
around to
there,
them. Mhm.
I want to pause really quickly because Tyler had a couple of good questions. Um, there was one that might be for the chat, which is, do you know if there are extensions or maybe packages that will conditionally format cells of data frames exported to XLSX files? I don't know the answer to that. I have stopped working in XLSX files. I haven't in years, but if somebody else knows, please let Tyler know in the chat. And then also, Tyler also asked, do you explicitly add a .here file to your project root when you're working in Positron?
I don't, but that's because so the here thing. So I do use the here package all the time, and it
Yeah.
has lots of different heuristics to figure out where the root of the project is. And so, um, I actually have used a dot here once, because I didn't have any of the other heuristics. So there are like a dot rproj thing or our project file. I'll sometimes even keep those because I'm like distributing stuff to students and stuff. So that still exists. Most of my repositories are Git repositories, and so it looks for like a Git folder.
Mm-hmm.
I think it looks for like a README, and so it'll like there are other tricks. If I'm using like a brand new folder with nothing else in it that would signal what the root is, that's where I do stick like a dot here thing. But I've only done that a couple times. But that's another thing you can do. Yeah.
Thank you so much. All right, let's move on to Project Manager.
Yeah, so Project Manager, what it does is it's a list of projects that you have, and you can actually. I'm gonna add this thing. This is some random folder. I think it's on my desktop. It is. So I made this data science lab desktop thing. So if I come to the command palette and search for Project Manager, I can say save project. Um, and then I can name it something. Sure. So now over in my project manager palette, which is here, I have this. And so there's that data science lab project. So I can just like click on this guy and it'll open a new project or new window with it in there. If you right click on it, you can actually add tags to it. And so I have stuff like sorted by research projects, by the classes I'm teaching, personal stuff. You can have whatever tags you want. So it makes it easier to organize the stuff you have in there. And
Whoa. So
so
this added a button to your activity bar?
Yeah, so it's
Okay.
one of the things on the side here called Project Manager.
Okay. So we install Project Manager. We get a little thing with like folders as an icon, and then
Mhm.
that allows us to have projects.
And the way you add projects, there's no way to do it from here. Um, yeah, so you have to do it from the command palette. So you just search for Project Manager
Okay.
Save Project, and that
Okay.
will take whatever folder you have open and count that as a project. And then it'll put it over on the side.
And then we can tag it with stuff. This
Mhm.
is amazing. This is so good.
And
Oh,
well,
I'm
to make
excited.
it even cooler, so this is a little preview of the Raycast stuff that I'm going to show. Um, the project manager extension can connect to Raycast. And so I have it set up where if I mash down Control, Shift, Option, Command, so like that whole corner of my keyboard, and then P, it will bring up this, and that will actually search all of the projects that I have in Project Manager. And so from wherever I'm at on my computer, this is just like Raycast, which is a third-party program application thing. I can come and say, I need to open my DataViz spring class. And there it is.
Amazing. And Sharon asked if you could just show one more time how you add those tags.
Oh, so add the tags, you right click on the project manager. So you right click on one of the ones that's added, and then you can say edit tags. And then those are in there.
Aha.
I think when you first install it, it has no tags, and you have to go into like the JSON file to add the tags that you want to use.
Okay.
But then once those are there, like it says in the README how to do that.
Okay,
Once they're
cool.
there, then you can like check them and stuff.
Amazing. And thank you to everybody who is helping out Tyler in the chat with the XLSX conditional formatting question. It's a fantastic one. And yes, Tyler, if you've only started using Git recently, it might not be a default thought to be like, oh, everything is going to have a .git, but it's a good idea anyway for everything to be tracked in Git, right? So if you always have a .git in your root folder, Positron will always know where the root is. It's a good way to know like if you've done the right thing and remembered to track your project. Okay, we are at the halfway mark. We're 30 minutes in. I wanted to have one more question from the chat and then we can hop to the next thing. Marlene asked, hey, how did you discover all of these?
Great question. Randomly. So I've been using VS Code for non-R stuff for years, like back in like 2017, 2018. So like all the Python stuff I do, any general text editing, because it is nice like having multiple cursors and doing all of that stuff. So I do all of my R stuff in RStudio and everything else in VS Code. And so I've known about other VS Code extensions for years just by stumbling across them and reading random blog posts and coming to things like this and seeing what people are doing. And there's lots of people on the Posit team that will like do blog posts about neat things they do and extensions they like. And so
Yeah.
it's really just kind of stumbling across this stuff.
Yeah. Oh, actually, there's a extension roundup that somebody put out. Isabella, is it Simon who put together a like data science plus
Oh,
extension bundle?
Garrick Aiden
Garrett.
Bowie.
Okay.
Yes.
Garrick. So Garrick Aidenbowie put together
Mhm.
a little data science plus bundle. If I can find it, I'll stick it in the chat. And I lied. We have one more question. Ulrich asked how GitHub is integrated into Positron compared to using desktop GitHub. I have never used desktop GitHub. I always use the terminal, or I would use like the UI in RStudio. I like it in Positron way better. It gives me way more visibility and transparency. So if you have a second to change to like
Mhm.
point that out, we could do that.
Yeah, so this is the source for my data viz class this semester. And so I just like put something here. It has one of these panels here is the source control panel. And so it shows stuff that's happened. So I can click here and see what has been added. I could commit just this chunk here. If there were other chunks, I could do that, or I could do the whole file. And then I can say whatever and then commit. And you can push to GitHub from here too.
Yeah.
Um,
Or just
yeah.
sync. You can click the sync button and that'll do the same thing.
Yep. Though I need
And
to.
then, of course, if you still want to use your terminal, it's right down there at the bottom. Some people have actually been telling me that they only use keyboard commands to switch their focus between console and terminal. And I would really like to figure out how to do that sometime soon because I'm a keyboard queen. I don't like clicking things if I don't have to. But
Yeah,
okay,
well,
Ulrich,
so
thank
with
you for
that,
that
I actually
question.
do. Emil had a blog post a while ago about how to do that. So if you look at the website thing, so I have all of my little settings here too, if you want to see them. But there's this cool keyboard shortcut section where I copied
Ooh,
from Emil here. The blog post link is there, where
fantastic.
he has it set up where I can, like, I've copied it, where if I press Command period and then Command 1, 2, or 3, it'll switch to those different areas. So if I'm like here typing, I can say Command period 2, and now I'm down in the console. I can say Command period 3, and now I'm in the terminal, and Command period 1, and now I'm back in the editor. And so that's thanks to Emil there, and it's in Discord as well.
Thank you. Oh, I love it. Okay,
Cool.
33-minute mark. How much further can we go in seeing all of Andrew's positron secrets? What's next?
All right, so one last thing before I show the cool connections panel is notice how this window is blue. And if I open up a different data viz thing, um, so here's my fall one, it is red. That's so cool. So the reason that works is because there's an extension called Peacock. And that lets you set project specific colors to your windows. And I find this is super helpful because I'm often like copying the same materials from a previous semester into the current semester. And so many times I've accidentally gone the other way. And like I will edit the previous semester and push it, and I don't see anything live on like the current semester. And it's so frustrating, and I overwrite stuff. And you've probably all run into that. And so what I do is with the Peacock extension, if you install it, you can tell it to be a specific color for that project. And so that's like delightful. And so I will do that for anything that is kind of like a long-standing project, like a class website or a research project, and I don't want to get confused about what it is. I'll give it some color,
I
which
love
is
this. I need
super
visual
helpful.
cues for everything, which is why I added like the branch, the project name, the file name to the top of my positron title part. Because I need visual cues all the time at where I am. I am perpetually on the wrong branch. And like I have had terrible problems with that. So this is really, really helpful. I'm gonna turn this one on for sure.
Yeah, it's great. I only discovered it. I think it was in Gaydon's post about like the roundup thing, and I was like, "Wow, this is life changing," and it is
Amazing.
life changing.
Also, I will mention native tabs, which Isabella just mentioned in the chat, which we learned from Dan, who's usually here with us today, but he's teaching right now this semester. Um, Definitely go check out native tabs and turn that on. It's fantastic. Oh, is
That's
that like
cool.
the next thing you were
No,
showing?
I
Oh,
just opened
oh, oh,
that from
you
Discord.
just
I'm
opened
gonna
it.
do that. Yeah, that's cool.
Very cool.
All right, so the connections pane. This is something that's really cool. That's unrelated to like extensions and stuff, but I've lost it. Actually, yeah. So over on the side here, you have this connections panel. RStudio has it too. And I find this is really helpful if you ever have to work with databases, which I rarely do. So all of my stuff is just like academic modeling with like CSV files and Excel files. But occasionally I will have to do stuff with databases, like connecting to an SQLite database or a MySQL database or a Spark thing or whatever. And the neat thing about Positron is it lets you like navigate the database directly from Positron itself, so you can like see what the tables are and see what's in there, which is super useful. Because I like some people love the command line for like navigating SQLite databases. I don't know how to do that. And so I like clicking on stuff and sorting stuff and seeing what's actually in there. And so the connections panel lets you do that. So on my little website thing, I actually have a blog post tutorial showing in general how to do it. I have these two real life use cases where I've done this before because again, I don't typically do database stuff. Um, I did help the state of Idaho make an election reporting website back in 2024. And for that, they have like their own proprietary database system that I couldn't access. And so what I asked them for was like the column names in that database. So I made my own like fake version of it locally that I could like play with, and it was the same structure, and that helped. But where it's really helpful is I have this current project that has a CSV file that is zipped, and when it's zipped, it's 10 gigabytes. And there's like no possible way to load that
Yikes.
into R. Or you can, but it like blows stuff up and it's bad. And so one neat thing you can do is you can shove the CSV file into a DuckDB file, which does some magic compression stuff, and makes it work really well. So once I get that 10 gigabyte file in DuckDB, it's only like 600 megabytes ish. And then you can do like queries with it, which again, I rarely use SQL queries, but there's a dbplyr that lets you use dplyr stuff to get stuff directly out of it, which is cool. And so if you look at the code here, you can actually see. So I connect to this little DuckDB thing, and then I load a CSV file, this massive thing, and then stick it in the database, and then close it, and then never have to do it again. So I have the raw data in that DuckDB thing, and then I can just access it like a normal CSV file, but it's like fast. So it's neat. So let me just show you what that looks like in practice, what the connections panel looks like. And so I have the code here on my little website thing. So I'm just going to copy it and walk through all the different pieces so you can see what it looks like. So we'll just make a new R file here. So tidyverse, great. So what I'm going to do is connect to a brand new DuckDB file. If you've never used DuckDB, that's okay, because it's just it's like it's like SQLite. That's like a single file thing that holds stuff in it. So now I have this cool file here called myfancydatabase.duckdb. It's just some sort of file. I don't even know what it looks like. I don't know if it's binary or plain text. It's something. Doesn't matter. because what I can do now is I can copy to it. And so I'm going to stick Gapminder in there because why not? I could stick diamonds in there. I could stick whatever I want in there. And over here in the connections panel, I can now click at that and then look inside DuckDB and kind of twirl down here. And now I have Gapminder inside that database. And so I can click on this and it shows in the Data Explorer. So I can actually see all of the data inside there, which is cool. You can use dbplyr to get stuff out of it. So I can use this table function that will connect to that database, pull out that Gapminder data set. This will actually run filter as an SQL command, like it does some behind the scenes translation into SQL, and then collect will bring it into R as a data frame. So that is now Gapminder 2007, but the way it worked was grabbing it from the database through some query, collecting the data, and bringing it back in. And then you can do stuff with it, which is cool. So that's all through this connections panel here. That works for SQLite and MySQL and Postgres and Spark and any database provider that works in RStudio, or if you have like an ODBC driver thing on your computer, it should show up here and you can connect to stuff. So
Amazing. This is something I have literally never used. I didn't use the connections pane in RStudio either, but I, like you, do not generally need to connect to databases. I do sometimes, but I just, do it with code, with a con, and I move on. This is so nice having a thing that you can actually navigate in UI. Okay, I saw a question Tyler asked in the chat, and I would love if we could hop back to Peacock for just a second to help answer it. Tyler says, when I change the Peacock color, it's changing colors for everything. Am I missing a setting?
everything like, let's see, let's just change this to, that's probably a hex color. Yeah. Cool. So that just changed it like that. So if you go into Peacock, if you go into the general settings, there it is. You can say keep foreground color. So there are other settings you can change in Peacock, and that might be controlling what is actually getting colored. It also might be a theme thing. So I'm using like the Monokai theme. If you're using some other theme, it might interact differently with Peacock. Um, Not
Okay,
entirely
cool.
sure, but yeah, it's if you search in here for Peacock, and then you can like darken it, and that like changes it, and you can do other things in there. Um, yeah, you can reset the workspace colors. There's some way to do like favorite,
Surprise me with a random color.
surprise me with a random color. Yeah.
I like it.
So yeah, it's in there somewhere.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for the pause.
Cool.
We had one more question from Javier, which was on the topic of the extension panel or the connections pane. He says, does anybody use, oh, no, does he use any DuckDB extensions in conjunction with dbplyr and remote databases?
I probably would if I used this more often, but I don't. Mostly because, again, like my really truly current use case for this is that massive file, that 10 gigabyte thing. And so I just have to like connect to it. And I actually use targets instead to kind of connect to it, um, get a subset of it, clean it up, and then save that as like an RDS file. And then that's the only thing I ever touch again. And so I don't like regularly connect to the database. But there are cool things out there. And Javier mentions like an MCP extension for it. So you can do like cool AI type stuff with DuckDB. But I just haven't done that. I'm not cool with databases. So
All right, we'll go play around with it. All right, what's next?
okay, so next is general non-R workflow stuff that makes life easier. And so I did mention already like Raycast, like if I mash all these things down and press P, this brings up all of my projects, and so I can open that. So what Raycast is if you are on a Mac, you have if you press Command Space on your Mac, it opens up Spotlight, which is like the built-in way of like searching for things on your computer or opening folders. It's a calculator too. If you type 1 + 1, it'll show you two. And so you can do that with Spotlight. Raycast is basically Spotlight but fancier, like super fancy. It's free. If you go to raycast.com, you can download it. They just released like a beta version for Windows like a month ago. So I'm assuming it's cool. I have not tried it yet because I don't use Windows, so I can't even try it, but it's probably cool. So Raycast lets you do all sorts of neat things. They have a huge presence on YouTube. The way they make their money, it's free, but they have like a pro version where you can like sign up for different AI models and it does other AI type stuff. And so that's how they make their money, but I don't pay them anything because I don't use any of their AI stuff.
Okay,
Um,
cool. So everything you're going to show is on the free version.
yeah, everything here is free. And so
Fantastic.
yeah, if you check out this 101 things you can do with Raycast, it takes like 5 minutes and just goes through really quick. So like here's a calculator, one plus one, neat. You can say like next Tuesday is January 20th, neat. So like that, but you can also search for stuff. Like if I want to open up Minecraft, there it is. That's cool. So
I
it's
have a
like a
question.
general thing for searching your computer. Yeah.
Is the like Command Option Control P, is that something you decided or is that a Raycast
That's
default?
something I decided. So
Okay.
that's where Raycast gets magical is like on its surface it looks just like a regular like application searcher or file searcher like Spotlight. But if you go into the settings for Raycast, it has all sorts of like extensions that do other things and you can set global keyboard shortcuts for them. So like I have this set up where if I press Command Option K, that will paste whatever's in my clipboard as plain text. And so if I'm copying from like Word and there's bold and italics in it, that will strip it all and just put it as plain text wherever I am. Um, and so that's where I'm setting these hotkeys here. So this little diamond thing, that's a short version of Control Shift Option Command, like mashing all of that stuff. So if I do mash all that stuff and then press G, it'll bring up this little thing where it will search my GitHub repositories. So I can search for
Whoa.
tidyverse, and then that will open
Whoa.
up a new tab.
Nah,
Um,
Adrian and I just had the same reaction, which was like very large eyes and slightly upset because
yeah,
that
so
is so cool.
all it does is like there's a in GitHub if you type user colon your name and then whatever that will search your own things, but I always forget
Yeah.
that. And so yeah, I just like mash this, press G, and then if I remember like I remember I had GG halves once, and so I'll do this and say, "Oh, there's how I use GG halves."
Oh
And so I can
my
like find it there.
gosh.
So that's set up
Bruno
magically.
is also amazed. Y'all, I'm losing it. That is the amazing. And like for just like for anybody who does not use a Mac, Control, Option, and Command in a MacBook at least are all right next to each other. They're just like three fingers in a row. And that's what you're talking about, Andrew, right? Is like those
Yeah.
three in a row. Yeah.
Yep.
It's so
Those three in a
easy.
row and then shift
You don't have to
sometimes
do
too.
finger gymnastics to get
Hmm.
there. So good. Okay, time check. We have 13 minutes left.
All right.
I don't want to get
So
in your
yeah.
way. But do we have any
So
questions in the chat? If we do,
I
Isabella,
actually have a
feel free to
picture of
stop
all of
me.
those keyboard shortcuts at the website things. You can see kind of the neat things I do there. That link to searching on GitHub, like I have the magic incantation to do that, a bunch of other stuff. So there's the project manager, smashing everything, pressing P. There's a project manager extension that you can install and it works. Um, there's some cool scripts. So the other cool thing about Raycast is it can run any arbitrary script. And so like I often like when I'm setting seeds for like analysis, I like to go to random.org and grab a seed from there just because it feels more random and uses atmospheric noise or whatever. So if I come here and type seed and press enter, it just grabbed it and copied it onto the clipboard. So now I have that as my seed 8930007. So that just grabbed it because it ran some script to do it. So I actually have a link to all of my scripts here. If you go there, you can see all of the cool stuff that's there. So there's get seed. I have a thing that toggles my little ring light here that's on my webcam so I can turn it on and off. So all
Oh
sorts
my
of
gosh. So it
stuff I
works
can
with
do.
your like peripherals.
Yeah, as long like if there's a script to do stuff with it, yeah. Because it just runs like bash commands and stuff.
This is
So
amazing.
yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna stop because I have a couple of questions.
Mhm.
First, a shout out. Sharon added in the chat that she has a Notebook LM notebook where she's added all of the Positron docs to it. I myself am a heavy NotebookLM user. I love it so much. It's so user-friendly. If you've never used it, please go play with it. You can use a UI to add sources, and then it's basically like a little self-contained RAG where it's only going to search the stuff that you want. But when it does give you a result, it gives you citations for everything. So you hover over a citation, takes you straight to the source, and highlights where it got the information from. Extremely helpful for docs. So she shared that. Go check that out in the chat. I will, if you're watching this later, I'll put it in the description. And then we had a couple of questions. She also asked MCP. Raycast has MCP servers.
Yes, Raycast does MCPs. That I don't know if that's only behind the pro stuff, but it does do cool MCP things. Um, so yeah,
So
Raycast.
let's go. Yeah, everybody go investigate on your own for that one. At least we know that it's there. Abdullah also asked, is there a hack to manage a repo that is both a project and an R package? I'm not sure. Maybe people in the chat can chime in about that one if you have any tidbits for Abdullah. Might be slightly off topic for our talk here, but we can definitely chat about it in the chat. Marlene says, Andrew, I've learned more about Positron in the last hour than I have in the last month. Okay, well, we have 10 minutes left. How much further can we
10
get?
minutes left. So a couple other cool little things about Raycast before I show one more thing and then answer whatever questions you have. So if you notice this thing up here in my menu bar, that shows that I'm currently in this meeting. And it knows that because Raycast can put like your upcoming events up in the menu bar,
Oh,
and it's cool. And it's smart enough where like if it's right before the event and you press like command space to get to it, it will show that current event, like the upcoming event there, and then I can just hit enter and it'll open Zoom or WebEx or whatever and like start the
command
meeting.
space? What does
Well, that
command space
command
do?
space is how you open Raycast in general. Like that's how you like open the
Oh
Raycast
my
searching thing,
gosh.
but it'll
Very
show up
easy.
there. It has a built-in clipboard history thing, which is magic. So you can go back and see everything you've copied and go back and grab it. So you don't need like a third-party clipboard history manager. It's in there. It
Did
has a
you like
built-in.
press something specific to get to that
Oh yeah,
clipboard
so I have that
memory?
set. So I have basically command option shift K is what I have it set for, and it'll
Your
open it.
brain must be very interesting on the inside to just have all of this in a Rolodex.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I never remember them. I have to like imagine the keyboard and like mesh stuff and like, oh yeah, it's that one. Um, it's got a cool
Amazing.
emoji picker, so I can like do this type of thing and search for emojis or whatever, which is cool. It has this is cool too. If you search for a color picker, it has a built-in color picker, so I can say I want
What?
that color, and it copies the
This
color
is
to the
amazing.
clipboard. So
I use a browser extension that does not work very well and I don't like it. So this is a fantastic like all-in-one tool. And also I saw Bruno that you had said like, hey, I recommend a future session on NotebookLM. I think that's a fantastic idea. And when you leave the session, there's going to be a little survey that has a little part that's like, what do you want to see somebody go through live on screen? Put that as a suggestion. Okay.
okay, so the last little thing here is weird. This cool program called Espanso, which is a separate program from Raycast. It does a completely different thing. It is also free and maybe open source. It's cross-platform. It works on Windows and Linux and stuff. If you've ever heard of Text Expander, I used to use that for a long time. It's the same thing, but free and open source. And so basically you type something like in that little demonstration, they typed colon date and it automatically expanded to the current date. You can do that with all sorts of cool stuff. And it works across the whole system. So like Positron and RStudio have ways of like setting snippets of code. So if you type something, it'll like put code there. That's helpful. I don't like doing those because I'll often be in different editors and I don't want to like set up one snippet one place and a snippet in another place. And so I don't do that. So what I do instead is if you look at this link here, these are all of my Espanso shortcuts. And there's all sorts of like really cool things. So for example, let me just show a few highlights. There's like a billion. And this again is just like the accumulated cruft of working with text expander since 2009. And then then they moved to like a subscription thing, and then I didn't want to pay for that. And then Espanso existed. So, and they're free. Um, Raycast has its own system. I don't like it as much. It's not as fully featured as Espanso, so I don't use it, but you could do that too. So for instance, if I'm like typing stuff and type semicolon DT, it expands to the current date. If I do semicolon DATE, it does that date. If I do semicolon DZ, it does a date with the little T thing inside for like a blog post, like timestamp. So you can do all sorts of like cool stuff. That's all just keyboard shortcuts that I've set. I am a typography nerd, and so if I'm writing something like 1 - 1, that's the wrong minus sign. And so I have a thing where if I do semicolon minus, that's the correct minus sign, which uses
What?
the crossbars at the same level as the plus sign,
As
so
a
they line
plus.
up.
I
Um,
love it. That has always
or
bothered me, but
if you do
I
like
can't be bothered to like learn the alt commands.
Yeah, like Windows, there are alt commands. On a Mac, there's lots of alt commands. Like you can do option minus and but not here. Option minus outside of Positron will do like an n dash. So what I do here is if I do semicolon ENN, that adds an n dash. So it's kind of a workaround for working in Positron there. If you have like an X here, I have it set to do the actual multiply sign if I do times. So that's the true multiplication sign. So stuff like that. Or if I'm just like typing, I study institutions, which is a really hard word to spell if you're writing fast. I actually study authoritarian institutions, and that's like a lot of words. And I will write authoritarian institutions, and it's like awful. So I have it set where if I type AUTHN, it expands to authoritarian, and then ISTTN, institution. Or like I have entrepel because I can never spell that word, so it expands to entrepreneurial. So all sorts of cool stuff. It has cool menus too. So if I start a brand new document and want like YAML metadata for like a Quarto file, I can do semicolon semicolon QMD, and it popped up on my other screen. It brings up this cool menu thing where I have different headers that I can potentially use, like a basic YAML header. There it is. And
Oh my
so now I can
goodness.
insert stuff, or let me do this. So if I do QMD again, let me show it over here. I can say full academic Quarto YAML header. Hold on. It got confused because it's on a different screen. So
It's
QMD,
okay. The joys of screen sharing.
QMD2. Oh, it's messed up, but it would put a bunch of stuff there. Yeah, so all sorts of cool stuff.
That's
So if you look at the website,
amazing.
there's other things. This is another cool thing is if I type call out, it brings up this cool little thing that I've made. So I can add a Quarto call out like a warning that is collapsed, that is the simple appearance without an
What?
icon, submit, that's all there. And now I can add my little call out warning stuff. So I have lots of little things for adding Quarto specific things. Like if you're making like a reveal JS slideshow and you want multiple columns, I can do COL and there's my column divs that
This is so cool.
automatically
This
get
is the stuff that
inserted.
I never remember how to do. And I almost always have to go copy paste from another one of my documents. Well, we have some questions that have rolled in through the
Mhm.
Discord. We have 3 minutes left. Let's see if we can hit some answers for things. Really quick, rapid fire. Is Raycast a replacement for Spotlight and Bartender?
It's a replacement for Spotlight. It's not quite a replacement for Bartender. So Bartender on a Mac is if you have a menu bar with lots of things in it, Bartender lets you like collapse them into like a hidden menu bar. Bartender is expensive.
Okay.
And but there is a thing called Ice menu bar that is like an open source menu bar thing for Mac OS. So this is an open source Bartender, and it's what I use
Okay.
now. It's great.
Cool. Someone also asked, Logan asked, what browser are you using? I think you're using Arc.
Using Arc.
So I will
Yes.
say, oh, Ryan put it in arc.net as well. Sharon asked, is there an easy way to see all of the shortcuts that you have already set up? I think there is.
All the Espanso shortcuts kind of. So if you look at this, all my shortcuts and settings, that's a Git repository. So Espanso is cool because it's all plain text configured. So if I come to like match here, so like here is um programming stuff. So if I type like semicolon WM, it will make this warning false, message false, Quarto chunk metadata thing. There's nothing magic about the semicolon thing. Some people do colon, some people won't have like a prefix. I just like the semicolon thing because I don't typically write like semicolon fig W. Like that's not a common
Right.
thing I type. So it's not going to accidentally trigger it. So everything is in this Git repository there. For Raycast, if you filter your stuff to show only customized, then you can see all of the stuff that you've set and see all the keyboard shortcuts there. Um,
Amazing.
yeah.
Jared, your question, I don't know what it means, but I'm gonna ask it. What shortcut have you set for an interrobang?
Oh, I don't have one. But I should. So that's the combination question mark exclamation mark like in one character. Um, so
Oh,
I
okay. I get
yeah.
it. Interrobang. How David Onder asked, how is he triggering those word replacements?
So that is because Espanso it's just running up here in my menu bar. On
Hmm.
Windows, it would run down in like the taskbar thing. And so it just watches what you type. And so if you trigger any of these things, like this R stop or semicolon R stop, will add this knitter knit exit thing. Um, and so that will trigger it. If I have this long words thing, so I've got lots of like multinomial. I can never spell that. So I have it semicolon MNL. Authoritarian, I don't have a semicolon there. I just like start typing AUTHN and then it magically turns into authoritarian. Characteristics, that's a tricky one. So I type cars and it magically changes. So yeah, you can see all of my
Fantastic.
stuff
So these are
there.
just like code snippets, but they're for words. All right.
Mhm.
Well, we've hit the top of the hour. I know people are going to have to jump. This was amazing, Andrew. Thank you so much for coming. Has been recorded. It's going to be on YouTube eventually. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope you had a good time.
Yeah.
Everybody, stick around in the Discord server. Continue to ask questions, answer each other's questions, and we will see you all next week on Tuesday. Andrew, would you like to say goodbye? Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for coming, everybody. This was great. I can talk about this
Yeah,
stuff like all day. It's my way of
I could
procrastinating is
I
figuring
could
out
listen to it
faster
all
ways to
day.
do stuff. So,
Okay, well, go read Andrew's blog. He so kindly packaged that all up for us. And we'll see you this Thursday on the Data Science Hangout. We have Mine Chetinkaya Rundell. If you know Mine, you know that she's amazing. Come see her on Thursday, and then we'll see you next week at the lab. Bye,
okay.
everybody.
Bye.